Hi, I'm Kathy Moore, and this is Steps in a Journey. We're doing a special class, Faith and Pen, Writing Your Spiritual Legacy. This is an 8-week course, and this is our last session. And we have a guest speaker today on publishing your book, getting your book out there, how to get it so that a publisher will accept it, or even the readers will be interested in buying it. So our guest speaker is Kathleen Kaska. Did I say that right?
Kaska.
Kaska without an S.
Yes.
Kaska, Kathleen Kaska, and she is an established published writer, and has given classes on to people specifically on how to get their book published and polished up. So let me introduce you to Kathleen.
Thank you for having me here, Kathy, to talk about publishing. We all have our stories to tell, and all of our stories are important because we are important. I grew up with a very large family. I have like 44 first cousins. And we saw each other all the time, but we didn't really share with one another our stories. So I saw my mother's parents every Sunday, and I know very little about them because they didn't spend time talking to me, nor did they even consider writing down their stories. So there's a lot that I don't know about my family, even though it's huge. And I saw them a lot and spent a lot of time with them. You know, most of them are gone now. My grandparents are gone, and I'm just left wondering, what was their life really like? So your story is important because you have family that cares about you, and they want to know who you are, and they want to know how you grew up and how you changed and how you evolved, and you have so much to share. So you might want to think about putting your stories down and publishing them, even if it's just a handout to your family, so they know who you are and what contributions you made. Nowadays, there are so many publishing options that we have before us. In making a choice, you have to decide what you want. And there are several questions that you can ask yourself before you decide to publish a book. The first question is why? Why do you want this to be published? What's the reason? And the second question is when? When do you want it to come out? Do you want it to be out soon? Or are you willing to wait and do the traditional method, which takes a lot longer? And then, who do you want to read this? Who are you writing it for? Your children, your grandchildren, or are you interested in a bigger audience? Maybe people you don't know. Is your story inspirational? And do you want to share it with others? And then, if that's the case, if you want it published and if you want a big readership, you have to consider how much time you have to promote it, because you'll have to do most of the promotion. And do you want assistance, editorial assistance in writing your book? And then a question that may not be important, but it might be, is how much money do you want to make? If you want to make any. Is there a financial reason for this? So ask yourself, why do you want to write this book before you make a decision? Nowadays, there are so many different types of publishing options available to us. When I published my first book in 1996, the options we have now were not available back then. It was very traditional. I wrote my book, I found an agent, the agent found a publisher, and then I got an advanced check, a royalty, I didn't get a royalty, but I got an advance. And then I would just sit around and wait for my check to come in. It's not like that anymore. It's not like that. Even with the top publishers, it's changed so much. So much of the work of selling the book is left to the author. So there's just so much you have to consider. So a traditional publisher is what I just explained. You have a publisher that does a lot of the work for you. Nowadays, there are a lot of small presses. In fact, they've taken up most of the market. A small press gives you other options, and which I will talk about in a little while. And then there is self-publishing. You can publish your own book, and there are several ways to do that. And one of them is through a vanity press. And I'll talk specifically about these. And then there's also university presses. So you have different ones that you can look at. A traditional publisher, like I said, will pay royalties in a large advance. They will edit your manuscript for you. They will do a lot of the promoting for you. It takes a long time to go on that route. If you do get a traditional publisher, it might take 2 or 3 years to get that book published after you send them the manuscript. They design the cover for you. You have very little input on that. With a traditional publisher, the shelf life of that book in the bookstore is very short. You have to make an impact within the first month of the first year, and then after that, it just kind of fades off. And they're expecting you to write another one. But the shelf time is really short on that. Many traditional publishers will not look at your manuscript unless you get an agent to sponsor you. So before you look at the publisher, you have to get an agent. Sometimes getting an agent is even harder than getting a publisher. Okay. And small presses. I publish with several small presses, and they offer the authors more options. They pay royalties. They usually don't pay you in advance. They will assign you an editor, but they will expect you to do a lot of the editing before their editor sees it. In other words, their editor is just going to polish it, but you've got to send them a pretty tight manuscript. They'll accept your manuscript without an agent, so you can skip the agent part and go right to submitting your manuscript with them. And they will usually allow the author to give input on what kind of cover they want on their book. After submission time, it takes maybe 6 months to a year to get the book published. It's not quite as long as going with a traditional publisher. They usually do not pay advances. You have a longer shelf life for this book because these books are published by what's called POD, Publishing on Demand. A traditional publisher will take your book and they'll publish multiple copies, which will be sent to warehouses for distribution. Print on demand doesn't do that. In other words, when somebody orders your book, it's printed at that time and then sent out. So it doesn't take as long to get the book out. Shelf life is longer. Your contract is usually negotiable, where it's unlike that in a traditional publisher. You can usually negotiate your contract. The focus with a small press is usually on a certain genre rather than a large topic for books. Like I have one publisher for one of my series, it's a mystery, and then I have another publisher with my nonfiction, and then I have another publisher with a different series, and each publisher has a different focus. So you kind of have to do your homework and decide what publisher is good for you. And so how do you do that? The best way and the easiest way is just to go into a bookstore and look at the books that are similar to yours. I mainly write mysteries, but there are all sorts of different subgenres in mysteries. There's horror, there's humorous, there's cozy, there's police procedural. So you want to look at those books that are like yours and then check out who the publisher is. So you have to do some homework and a little bit of research before you start submitting. What working with a small press usually does is allows you to build a close relationship with your publisher and your editor. And that's important to me. I have a publisher that publishes one of my mystery series, and we're on, right before a book comes out, we're on the phone sometimes once a week. And she's there with me every step of the way. You know, we meet, we discuss the cover, we discuss the promoting, and you know, I feel really supported. Whereas some publishers, you just send them the manuscript and then they don't want to hear from you. That we've got it now, we'll take it. But it's important for me to know that someone cares about me and the success of my book. So do some homework before you select a publisher. And another way you could do that besides going into a bookstore is look at the publisher's website and check out the other authors that publish with them. And try and contact some of those authors and see how happy they are with that publisher. You know, don't be shy. Just, you know, say, you know, I've noticed your book, you published with this company, are you satisfied with them? So find out, do some research. Small presses are so different. It really pays to know who you're publishing with. Another publisher I have does not offer me a good discount on my books. You want to get a good discount because you want to buy the books yourself and sell them at different gift shows. One author does not give me much of a discount, and I think when I buy from them, I get like $1 discount on a book. So that's not much at all. Whereas my other publisher does a lot of work to get me the best price in printing as possible. And so sometimes I can buy my own book and get a $10 discount. So there's just a lot of questions that you have to ask. And I went to a conference a few weeks ago, and I needed to bring about 100 books with me. So I got it on the phone with her, and in order to save me a big expense, she spent like all day looking for just the right printer to give me the right price at the right quality. She didn't charge me for this at all. And so when I ordered the books, I got like a discount of like $12. So she really works with me, so you have to just be careful with who you select. Now, you can self-publish your book. It's not as easy as it sounds. You have to be really good with technology in order to do that. Amazon is a good place to start. They have a pretty good website that shows you how to self-publish. I don't choose that route because it's too much work for me, and I don't want to get into all the details. But if you're good with technology, you know, it might be something you could look into. That will bring a lot more money to you because you're not sharing it with a publisher. I did publish 2 books, self-publish them on Amazon for my niece, just to kind of get an idea of what it's like to do self-publishing. When my great niece was 5 years old, she called me one day and she knew I was a writer, and she said, "And Kathleen, I want to write a book, I want to write a book." So, I said, "Okay, that's great." I said, "Tell me the story." So she told me the whole story, just from beginning to end, and who the bad guy was. And so I wrote it up for her, and then she drew some pictures. And so we published it on Amazon. And I found out that there's a company called Fiverr, Fiver, that will help you with book covers and even some images. They'll even help you put together the book if you want. This is the first one we did. It's the first one I published with Abby. And she wanted to do the illustrations, so she drew some of the pictures herself. And it's just a very small little book, and we didn't promote it a lot, but it was just something that I could do with her, just me and her, ourselves, working together.
Are you talking Abby here?
What?
In the church? There's Abby girl here.
Oh, no,
Okay, so it's
no,
not-
she lives in Texas.
Oh.
And this is my great niece, Abigail Price. So she sells it in her lemonade stand. And this cover here,
So cute.
going through Fiverr, cost me $25 for the design.
Of course.
And the woman who designed this redid it several times, and so it's really inexpensive to go through that.
To make it
So
proper,
she did a
yeah.
great job.
Wow.
And then 2 years ago, Abby called, or 2 years later she called, and she was like 7. She goes, "I'm ready for book number 2. And so she again told me the story, but she was a little bit older and she didn't want to bother with doing the illustrations this time. So she told me the story, and this is a advanced copy. She wanted to write a story about her dogs. So we wrote a dog called Abby and her doodles. She has a Labradoodle and a Bernedoodle. So I said, "Okay, well, tell me about your dogs, and tell me why you like them and what do they do, and just tell me all about them." So she told me about her dogs, and so this time I used the same illustrator. She made the cover for me, but because Abby didn't want to do the illustrations herself, the woman who illustrated this did the illustrations for the book too. And again, we did not want to spend a lot of money. We just wanted something simple, and this was just something that I could do with a member of my family. And it didn't cost me much at all. I think with the cover, the illustrations on the inside, it was less than $100. So you have, a lot of options. There's also a choice you have. It's called a vanity press or a subsidiary press. And this is a company that will take your manuscript and publish it for a price. You pay them up front. And why would you want to do that? Well, there are several reasons. If you just don't want to deal with all the technical aspects of it, you can send them your manuscript and they will publish it. They will not edit it. They will not promote it. They will usually not do the cover design. Everything, all the getting your ISBN numbers, getting it copyrighted, you do it all. But they will just print your book. Now, I was working with an author a few years ago who wanted to go with a vanity press because he was getting older and he wanted a story out there. Money wasn't a problem with him. So he found a vanity press that published his book, and sent him copies, and he mainly gave them away to his family. I think it cost him about $5,000 to get it done, but it's full of his photographs. It's probably got about 100 of his photographs in here, which was a lot of work. So they charged him a lot, but this is exactly what he wanted. You know, he said, here's my manuscript, here's my photos, here's the money, send me the books. So, you know, so you have a lot of different options. So why should you do this? You know, why should you do this? Like I said earlier, you have a story to tell. It's important. It's important to your family. A long, long, long time ago, before, when most people could read or write, they sat around and they tell stories. You know, they talked and they shared and they tell stories. We don't do that anymore. Well, how many times have you been in a restaurant and you've seen a family sitting at a table and there's the mom and dad and maybe 2 kids and they all have their own screens? They're not even talking to one another.
Yes.
You know, and to me that's kind of sad because, you know, our story's important. Everybody here has a good story, and we can share that and we can inspire others. I mainly write fiction, but I was in an organization in which we had to give a speech, and we had to talk about our childhood. And I didn't want to do it. It's like, no, I don't, you know, I just make up stories. I don't want to talk about or write about myself. But I had to. And I wrote about growing up Catholic. And in order to do it, I had to put a humorous twist on it, because it was kind of traumatic for me. So I put a humorous twist on it, and I talked about growing up in this huge Catholic family. And they liked it, and so I had to give another one. So I did another one. So then I turned it into a blog post. And it's called Growing Up Catholic in a Small Texas Town. And so I started writing. I started writing about, you know, myself and my experiences. And I probably got 50 stories now. But over the time that I was writing, my stories evolved. And now it's not so much growing up Catholic in a small Texas town, it's a grown-up Catholic. So I didn't realize it until I looked at my stories, and I realized that I'm talking about the changes in my life from childhood to now. And my stories now are they're on a more spiritual level, you know, that by telling these stories, I was able to grasp onto my faith even more than I ever had. And then the more I did that, the more I realized I have a lot to share. I have a lot to tell. And so I'm planning on one day putting these together in a book. But, you know, writing is such a personal experience, you know. It changes you. It makes you feel like, makes you understand yourself better. So I'm glad that Kathy has taught this class, and I'm glad that she's encouraging all of you to type up your stories, and even if they're in the bulletin, that's a great start. So you all have stories to tell. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Kathleen, for
Thanks
coming
for
to our
having me.
class and telling us all this. My book, Song of Hope, is self-published. I had a publisher who was a friend of mine. She just published a couple of books, her own book and my book, and I don't know if she published any more or not, and then she quit publishing. But she found the printer for it. I paid the printer. He printed out I know that I had a few people edit it for grammar and that, but I really don't remember all the work that went into it. The cover I chose, I asked 3 people to write a cover for design a cover for it. The first one was sort of like a coloring book cover in which Jesus was in part of the picture. And the second one declined because she was not a Catholic and it was sort of against her religion. And the third one was a high school student, and she drew this design. And when I looked at it, I was drawn to the center. And in my experiences with God, who is the center of you, and you're drawn to that center, but it takes a while. You have a lot of layers of hurts and other things that keep you from realizing that God is within you. And anyway, I just was attracted to this design. And then the publisher said, well, you should have a background design. I had just come and joined Sister, and of course she took me to the tulip fields, and this was a display garden that I took a picture of, and we put that as a background. Then Sister suggested the Cairo in the very, very center. I don't know if you can see that. There's a Cairo. And then the white lines are, the Cairo is a sign of Jesus. And the white lines symbolize God. And then the Holy Spirit there in the book is embossed. It's you can feel it. And that cost a whole $1 to do that, to put the embossing on each book. And also, I had each book, let's see, wrapped. Every book is individually wrapped, so that also costs $1 for every book, added to the price of the book. So I'm glad I did that, because now these books are old, and yet they're still fresh when I buy them. So I got, I think, 1,000 books, and I have sold by myself, 900 of them. But we were lucky in which I was with Sister Mary Matthew, and we would travel all over and give talks at least once a month to a different parish, and we'd bring along our box of books to sell. And in that way, you have an audience. They're listening to you, they want your book, and it's easy to sell at that time. So that's how I sold 900. I think I have 2 boxes, maybe it was 3 boxes left, and each box contains 50 books. So I started, just for this class, I sent out a word to several publishers to send me something about them so that I would get an interest to tell you about publishers. And one of them, Christian Faith Publishing, said, we'd like to see your manuscript. And I thought, well, what the heck? So I sent them my book, and they liked it. And they spent, they've completely